Welcome back to the Olive Grove. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Today we're digging into Zechariah chapter 1.
Zechariah.
Yeah, using that fantastic study from My Christian Space.
Great resource.
You know what really jumps out at me right from the start?
What's that?
The names.
Oh, yeah.
Zechariah means God remembers, right?
Yeah.
And then his father, Berechiah, God blesses.
Right, and the grandfather.
And don't forget the grandfather, Ido, meaning appointed.
It's like a little mini genealogy packed with meaning.
It really is.
It's like setting the stage.
God saying, hey, I'm about to do something big.
You know what else is interesting? The timing of all this.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
This message comes in the 8th month
8th month. Okay.
of the 2nd year of Darius's reign.
Second year.
Now, biblically, the number 8 often represents new beginnings.
Okay, new beginnings.
Resurrection kingdom establishment.
Oh, wow. So like a new era is dawning.
And that 2nd year with its duality.
Duality.
Right, that two-ness,
Okay, yeah.
It hints at maybe a period of transition.
Like contrasting perspectives.
Exactly. Like Zechariah and the people are at a crossroads.
That's fascinating.
And then we get to verses 2 and 3.
Yeah, and things take a bit of a turn.
Right out of the gate, God expresses his anger.
Yeah, the Israelites' ancestors.
He's not holding back either.
It feels like whiplash.
Zechariah reminds them of the consequences
The consequences their ancestors faced.
for ignoring God's prophets.
Powerful stuff.
Especially that detail about being buried in a foreign land.
Oh, yeah. For the Jewish people, that would have been devastating.
Their covenant with God tied to the promised land.
It's like a severance from their heritage.
It really makes you think about our own burials in Babylon.
What do you mean?
Are there areas where we've drifted so far from God
Oh, see.
that we've lost connection with our spiritual inheritance?
That's a powerful question.
Sometimes the toughest messages
Are given out of love
to wake us up.
and call us back to where we belong.
Speaking of belonging, let's take a moment to highlight My Christian Space.
The amazing community behind this deep dive.
They're doing incredible work,
Not just with insightful Bible study,
but also making a real impact.
through Enduring Freedom Ministries.
Their parent organization,
And get this, Enduring Freedom Ministries is working towards
establishing a food pantry.
a food pantry in Jerusalem.
And you imagine
It's such a powerful symbol.
of God's provision and love.
In a city so central to our faith,
It's a beautiful vision, and if you feel led to support this initiative,
you can find all the details on the My Christian Space website.
every contribution makes a difference.
And while you're there,
Check out their other resources, too.
like more in-depth studies on Zechariah
They even offer early access to future episodes.
of the Olive Grove.
That's right, so you can be in the know before anyone else.
And for even more content, subscribe to the Olive Grove podcast on YouTube.
We've got discussions, visuals, even some bonus features.
Okay, back to Zechariah. Verse 7, we see a shift in tone.
Yeah, from rebuke to a series of incredible visions.
And the timing is interesting.
It's the 24th day of the 11th month.
Okay, 11th month.
The same month, the Israelites in the wilderness were given the law again.
After a time of rebellion.
Like a deliberate echo,
A reminder that even after exile
there's always the possibility of renewal.
and recommitment.
So Zechariah is having these visions.
And the first one is pretty intense.
A man on a red horse,
Oh, yeah, remember.
leading other horses of different colors.
So many horses. What's the significance?
Well, horses in the Bible
Yeah.
often represent military might or political power.
Like a show of force?
In this vision, they're patrolling the earth.
Like scouts reporting back.
To the angel of the Lord.
And their report.
The whole world is at peace.
Peace. But Jerusalem is in ruins.
It's ironic, isn't it?
It's like, if the world is so peaceful,
Then why is God's chosen city still in such a state?
maybe this peace is superficial.
Or maybe it highlights a spiritual blindness.
Like the nations are oblivious to the plight of God's people.
It makes us question our own assumptions about peace and justice.
What are we overlooking in our own world?
Where are we complacent, even as God's purposes are hindered?
Wow, those are some thought-provoking questions.
These visions aren't just historical snapshots,
They're timeless messages.
speaking directly to us today.
And that's what makes diving into Scripture so rewarding.
It's about engaging with the living Word of God.
And letting it transform our lives.
Absolutely.
And this is just the beginning.
So we left off with Zechariah seeing those horses.
Yeah, reporting everything was peaceful.
A bit strange considering Jerusalem was in ruins.
And then in verse 12, the angel of the Lord asks this really poignant question.
To God, right?
How long will you withhold mercy from Jerusalem and Judah? You've been angry with them for 70 years.
70 years.
That's a lifetime.
It makes you think, have you ever felt like that?
Like stuck in a personal exile waiting for God to act.
Wondering if he'd forgotten you.
Definitely. I think we've all felt that way sometimes.
That feeling of being in a spiritual wilderness, longing for restoration.
And that number 70, it's not just a random number, right?
No, it's significant.
What does it mean?
Well, you've got the spiritual completeness of 7, combined with the earthly completeness of 10.
So like total exile.
Affecting every aspect of their lives.
Wow, so it's not just a physical exile.
It's deeper than
A soul-level exile.
But here's the good news.
What's that?
God responds.
Oh, yeah.
And his words in verse 13 are described as kind and comforting.
That's what we need to hear.
What's interesting is those words aren't directed at Zechariah.
Who are they for then?
The angel.
The angel.
It's like we're getting a glimpse into the heavenly court,
Wow.
witnessing this intimate exchange between God and his messenger.
So even in judgment, there's compassion.
God's heart is still full of compassion for his people.
And then, in verses 14 and 15,
The angel relays God's message to Zechariah.
and it's powerful stuff.
God expresses his jealousy for Jerusalem and Zion.
Jealousy.
It's more like a fierce protectiveness.
Oh, okay.
He's angry towards the nations who've taken advantage of their vulnerability.
Makes sense.
God is deeply invested in the well-being of his people.
He's not indifferent to their suffering.
And he won't allow injustice to prevail forever.
That's reassuring.
And then in verse 16, we get the promise of restoration.
Tell me more.
God declares, I will return to Jerusalem with mercy. My house will be rebuilt.
It's a complete turnaround.
From despair to abundance. From exile to homecoming.
And this promise isn't just for the Israelites, right?
It's for all of us.
A reminder that no matter how dire our situation,
God's power to redeem and restore is limitless.
he can take the broken pieces of our lives,
And create something beautiful.
even more glorious than we could have imagined.
But there's more.
What else?
Zechariah is instructed to proclaim this message.
To share this message of hope and restoration.
It reminds me of Paul's words to the Corinthians.
About the ministry of reconciliation.
Exactly. We're entrusted with that message.
So we're not just recipients of God's grace.
We're also called to be ambassadors of that grace.
Sharing it with others, offering hope to those in their own exiles.
That's a powerful thought. What aspect of this promise resonates most with you?
For me, it's that sense of God's fierce jealousy.
That passionate protectiveness.
It's a reminder that even when we feel alone, God sees us, cares for us, and is fighting for us.
Beautiful and so true. Now on to the next vision.
Okay, what does Zechariah see now?
4 horns.
Horns.
Not usually a good sign.
I know it sounds a bit ominous.
Like power, but not a good kind of power.
And Zechariah asks the angel, what are these?
And the angel tells him,
These are the horns that scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem.
the forces that have dispersed and oppressed God's people.
What are the horns in our own lives?
The things that try to scatter us, push us away from God.
Fear, doubt, temptation.
Even external pressures and opposition.
And the number 4, that has to mean something right.
Often represents totality, all directions or nations.
Like the combined forces working against God's people.
Throughout history.
It's sobering to think about.
But there's more to this vision.
What happens next?
A glimmer of hope.
In what form?
4 craftsmen.
Craftsmen.
Seems a bit strange, right?
Definitely. Craftsmen against those intimidating horns.
The text doesn't explicitly say who they represent,
It's a mystery.
inviting us to consider who God might use to bring about his purposes.
I like that it's like a puzzle.
And their mission is to terrify and overthrow those nations.
What a plot twist.
A powerful image of God's justice.
He's not going to just sit by.
He's going to defend his people and bring about their restoration.
Maybe these craftsmen represent unexpected allies.
Or internal forces working against those oppressive systems.
Like you said earlier about the number 2 different viewpoints.
It challenges us to think beyond good versus evil.
God can use anyone or anything to accomplish his purposes.
And we've got these craftsmen sent to terrify the nations.
Right, it's like a divine counteroffensive.
But why craftsmen? It's an interesting choice.
Why not warriors or angels with flaming swords?
It speaks to how God's power works.
It's not always what we expect.
These craftsmen aren't sent to fight directly,
More about disrupting things.
shaking those oppressive systems to their core.
So they're not warriors. They're more like
Skilled artisans, builders, creators.
People who can shape the world around them.
God working through unexpected means.
Using ordinary people.
To bring about extraordinary change.
Makes you think about all the people making a difference in the world.
Teachers, artists, writers.
Even those in seemingly mundane roles.
God can use anyone.
As long as they're willing.
To be his instrument.
We don't need a big platform or a fancy title.
God can use us right where we are.
With the gifts and talents he's given us.
And sometimes the most powerful transformations.
They happen quietly.
Through the work of those who are shaping culture, building bridges, creating beauty.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Zechariah chapter 1.
What are some key takeaways?
Well, first, God remembers his people.
Even when we feel forgotten.
Abandoned, lost in our own exiles.
He's working behind the scenes.
Orchestrating events for our good.
For his glory.
And he doesn't just remember.
He actively intervenes.
He sends messengers, offers comfort, promises restoration.
He fights for his people.
Even when we can't see it.
We need to be people of hope.
Like Zechariah, receiving those visions in a time of exile.
Clinging to the promise of restoration.
Even when things seem hopeless.
God is working out his plan.
For our ultimate good.
And we need to be open to the unexpected.
Like those craftsmen.
A reminder that God can use anything.
Anyone.
To accomplish his purposes.
Let go of our preconceived notions.
Be open to the surprising ways he moves.
So as we go about our lives,
let's look for those unexpected opportunities.
To be a part of God's work.
Maybe he's calling us to be those craftsmen.
Using our skills and talents.
To bring about his kingdom here on earth.
What an incredible deep dive into Zechariah chapter 1.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, keep seeking those golden nuggets of knowledge.
And may God's word transform your heart and mind.